Hello students, welcome to the lecture on human settlements, and after this lecture we will be able to learn the following objectives. Understand rural and urban settlements, understand the problems of human settlements faced by developing countries, understand functions and services of urban settlements, understand the morphology of cities. Types of settlements. Let us begin with settlement. A settlement is a place where people live. A human settlement is defined as a place inhabited more or less permanently. A village, a town or a city, all are examples of human settlements. Conurbation, metropolitan area. A super city consisting of multiple cities and towns. The population is usually a several million. Large city, a city with a large population and many services. The population is greater than 1 million. City, a city would have abundant services but not as many as a large city. The population is usually 1 lakh. Large towns, a large town has a population of 20,000 to 1 lakh. Town, a town has a population of 1,000 to 2,000. Towns are larger than villages but smaller than city. Village, it is a clustered human settlement or community larger than a hamlet but smaller than town and city. These are generally located in rural areas. A village generally does not have any service, possibly only a small corner shop or small post office. Villages have population of 100 to 1,000. Hamlet. A hamlet is a rural community, a small settlement which is too small to be considered a village. A hamlet has a tiny population, less than 100, and very few, if any, services and few buildings. Patterns of settlement. Settlements may also be classified by their shape, patterns, types. The major types classified by shape are compact or nucleated settlements. These settlements are those in which large number of houses and buildings are close together, often clustered around a central point. The location of a nucleated settlement can be determined by a range of factors, including being easy to defend, close to a water supply, located at a root center, or in fertile plains. Dispersed settlements. In these settlements, houses are spaced far apart and often interspersed with fields. A cultural feature such as a place of worship or a market binds the settlement together. Linear settlements. It is where the buildings are built in lines and is often found on steep hillsides. Rural settlements. Settlements are divided mainly into urban and rural settlements. They vary according to function, size, and characteristics. Rural settlements include communes and villages. Their function is mostly residential only. They are dominated by primary activities such as agriculture, animal husbandry, fishing, etc. There are many types of rural settlements, such as clustered rural settlements. A rural settlement where a number of families live in close proximity to each other, with fields surrounding the collection of houses and farm buildings. Circular rural settlements. The circular form consists of a central open space surrounded by structures. This model has a center with homes, barns, schools and churches, and as we move away from the center, it is surrounded by farmland. Linear rural settlements. Linear rural settlements feature buildings clustered along a road, river, or dike to facilitate communications. The fields extend behind the buildings in long, narrow strips. The town would follow the river. Dispersed rural settlements. Rural settlement, which has farmers living on individual farms, isolated from neighbors alongside other farmers in settlements. Dispersed settlement. Patterns dominated in the American Midwest in part because the early settlers came primarily from the Middle Atlantic colonies. The bonds that created the initial clustered rural settlement had weakened. Colonial American clustered settlements were built in a cluster formation around an open common. Most of these people in the group were of one church or culture. These clustered settlements helped reinforce religious and cultural values. Certain geographical factors affect establishment of a rural settlement. Water supply. Usually, rural settlements are located near water bodies such as rivers, lakes and springs where water can be easily obtained. Sometimes the need for water drives people to settle in otherwise disadvantaged sites such as islands surrounded by swamps or low-lying river banks. A clean supply of water was needed for drinking, cooking and cleaning. Water could be taken from a river or a well. Land. People chose to settle near fertile lands suitable for agriculture. Upland. Upland, which is not prone to flooding, was chosen to prevent damage to houses and loss of life. Thus, in low-lying river basins, people chose to settle on terraces and levees, which are dry points. Building material. The availability of building materials, wood, stone, near settlements is another advantage. Early villages were built in forest clearings where wood was plentiful. Defense. During the times of political instability, war, hostility of neighboring groups, villages were built on defensive hills and islands. Planned settlements. Sites that are not spontaneously chosen by villagers themselves, planned settlements are constructed by governments by providing shelter, water and other infrastructures on acquired lands. Patterns of rural settlements reflect the way the houses are sited in relation to each other. The site of the village, the surrounding topography and terrain influence the shape and size of a village. Rural settlements may be classified on the basis of a number of criteria. On the basis of setting, the main types are plain villages, plateau villages, coastal villages, forest villages, and desert villages. On the basis of functions, there may be farming villages, fishermen's villages, lumberjack villages, pastoral villages, etc. On the basis of forms or shapes of the settlements, these may be a number of geometrical forms and shapes such as linear, rectangular, circular, etc. Linear pattern. In such settlements, houses are located along a road, railway line and river, canal edge of a valley or along a levee. There are a few problems faced by rural settlements. Rural settlements in the developing countries are large in number and poorly equipped with infrastructure. They represent a great challenge and opportunity for planners. Supply of water to rural settlements in developing countries is not adequate. People in villages, particularly in mountainous and arid areas, have to walk long distances to fetch drinking water. Waterborne diseases such as cholera and jaundice tend to be a common problem. The general absence of toilet and garbage disposal facilities cause health-related problems. The houses made up of mud, wood and thatch remain susceptible to damage during heavy rains and floods and require proper maintenance every year. Unmetalled roads and lack of modern communication network creates a unique problem. Urban settlement. Urban settlements include towns and cities. They represent organisms within socio-economic sphere with roads as arteries and residential zones as main organs of a body. Urban settlements are characterized by high buildings, in the largest cities also skyscrapers, industrial zones, that is light industry, sometimes heavy industry, developed infrastructure, example easy access to motorways, train stations, etc. Developed services, example hypermarkets, car repairs, banks, insurances, etc. Green areas and parks. Urban settlements can be classified on the basis of following. Population size. Normally, every commune with number of inhabitants more than 2,000 is considered to be urban settlement. A commune with the status of town. If a town has more than 1 lakh inhabitants, it is a city. Occupational structure. In some countries such as India, the major economic activities, in addition to the size of the population, in designating a settlement as urban are also taken as a criterion. Administration. The administrative setup is a criterion for classifying a settlement as urban in some countries. Location. Location of urban centers is examined with reference to their function. Strategic towns require sites offering natural defense. Mining towns require the presence of economically valuable minerals. Industrial towns generally need local energy supplies or raw materials. Tourist centers require attractive scenery, etc. In spite of towns performing multiple functions, we refer to their dominant function. According to their functions, towns and cities are classified into the following categories. Administrative. National capitals, which house the administrative offices of central governments such as New Delhi, Canberra, Beijing and London, etc., are called administrative towns. Trading and commercial towns. Agricultural market towns such as Kansas City, banking and financial centers like Frankfurt, large island centers like Manchester, and transport nodes such as Baghdad and Agra have been important trading centers. Cultural towns. Places of pilgrimage such as Jerusalem, Mecca, Jagannath Puri and Varanasi, etc. are considered cultural towns. Reasons why megacities are expanding so fast. Increasing job opportunities, availability of health services, communications and transport facilities, good scope of trade and commerce. People flock to cities to avail of employment opportunities and civic amenities. Since most cities in developing countries are unplanned, it creates severe congestion. Shortage of housing, vertical expansion and growth of slums are characteristic features of modern cities of developing countries. Problems of human settlements in developing countries. Urban areas in developing countries are characterized by increasing poverty. There is typically a large population of less affluent people residing in slums and squatter settlements. A slum can be broadly defined as a dilapidated shelter, while usually a squatter settlement is highly organized despite being illegal. Summary. Now in the end, let us summarize what we have learnt in this lecture. Human settlements are called cities, towns or villages, and a distinction is made between urban and rural settlements. The basic difference between towns and villages is that in towns, the main occupation of the people is related to secondary and tertiary sectors, while in the villages, most of the people are engaged in primary occupations such as agriculture, fishing, lumbering, mining, animal husbandry, etc. Developed countries experienced a rapid urbanization during the 19th century. The most important cause of urbanization is rural-urban migration. Both rural as well as urban populations can be classified on the basis of various parameters such as population size, location, occupation, etc. Rural population has various problems. Waterborne diseases such as cholera and jaundice tend to be a common problem. Urban settlements face problems such as slum housing, traffic congestion, crime, vandalism and litter, etc.